She became our superintendent in the fall of 2014. And before she came to Shoreline, she was the superintendent of the White Pass School District. And she was, before that, an administrator for Washougal School District and Vancouver Public Schools. She was a classroom teacher for 9 years, teaching English, journalism, American studies, Spanish, and special education, as well as, I'm sure, other things. I know that she was working on her PhD in education leadership from Washington State University, and that she grew up in Vancouver. So she is a true Washingtonian. She mentioned earlier, when she first moved to Shoreline, she lived in the Echo Lake neighborhood. So she is our neighbor, and we want to welcome you to our meeting.
Well, what a nice welcome, Gidget, in the same way that I hope I don't get emotional. Gosh, I didn't anticipate that. In the same way that the Echo Lake Neighborhood Association has always been really, really welcoming to my husband and I, whether we were stopping by for a picnic. I think always invited. I hope always invited. I don't know if we ever crashed it.
Still invited.
From just looking at the Mongers, who once, when I was out on a pro campaign during my off hours, not with my superintendent, they stopped by to cheer us on and bring us refreshments. Just always amazing people. Diane, you've been such a demonstrated such a willingness along the way to share our district story, and just appreciated getting to know all of you. But I do have an official presentation, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I don't like that because then I can't see all of you anymore, but I hope if somebody will let me know if there's questions along the way, but I can also happily, I'd be happy to take any at the end too. So let's just go to slideshow here. You'd think I'd be a little better at doing this. A number of times I've done Zoom now, but looking back and looking forward, and I took a little bit of license with that to mean both myself as well as the district. So hopefully this will be of interest. I want to review our construction projects, including the Echo Lake field, so that you have an update on that. Enrollment, as you know, has been really interesting, and I want to review that. Some construction updates, an overview of our response to the pandemic and celebrations, to the topic that Gidget introduced earlier, some equity work in the district. I want to talk to you about how you can engage with our new superintendent and take any questions you have. So this is looking back. I barely recognized this woman. My sister recently asked me if I thought my hair was going to turn brown again after the pandemic. And I said, I don't think so, but one never knows, does one? So this was from an article that Diane published about the end of my last week of school here. So, or my last week of, end of my first week of work. So welcoming me, and there I am. So as I introduced construction, I think I presented to Echo Lake about a bond a long time ago. And just a reminder that the construction we've done in the district was really geared toward supporting our instructional needs. We took the time to say, what do we need in the district before we built? And that created two really important things. One was that our early learning programs be housed in one place. In some districts, every school has a preschool, or every school has a site. That makes the preschool teacher naturally very isolated, because typically there's only one at each site. And instead, we wanted to have them all at one site, which, if you haven't had the chance, when another chance arrives to tour that site, I encourage you to do so. Then the other thing that is, up until very recently, we had K-6 elementary schools, and then the 7-8 middle schools. And I think I don't remember who just said, when you got to middle school, your kids didn't want you around so much anymore. But there's also the challenge of the turnover there. Everybody's either coming in or going out at our previous model of middle schools. And also a lot of our Instructional materials are now geared, and the standards towards 6, 7, 8. The science standards, we don't have labs in our classrooms, etc. So the IPPC, the Instructional Program Planning Committee, recommended that we move 6th graders to the middle schools. So we did that. They haven't actually gone yet, but they're going to go very, very soon. So we are excited for Monday when our 6th graders will have the chance to be in our amazing middle schools. So you recall way back, this was a slide from our bond, from my bond informational presentation, as was the last one. That's what our schools look like. Our Early Learning Center was an old elementary school, and Parkwood had been built in the 60s. All of these schools had definitely we got our money's worth with these schools in the district, and they were phenomenal for the times, but it was time for something new, and we're tremendously grateful that our community passed at over 74% that bond in 2017. So here, just taken today, is the entrance to the new Parkwood. It almost looks like an artist rendering of a school, doesn't it? Because it's just so beautiful and so just an outstanding design for learning there. 2-story elementary school. There's a lot of efficiencies that come with building up. You'll see that all of our schools are less sprawling and more built up than the school they replaced. They're more secure, they're more energy efficient. There's a lot of positive things about that for modern schools. Then the Edwin Pratt Early Learning Center, all the schools are wonderful. Edwin Pratt Early Learning Center is just so unique. Each one of the classrooms, what you're seeing here in this picture, are the yards. So each classroom shares a yard with another classroom. What we know is some of our students don't have yards, and these yards don't have a lot of, they don't have swings. They have cut off logs to jump on. They have floral beds to get their hands dirty and do a little gardening. They can run around, but it's not like a traditional playground. In the courtyard of this school is a very traditional playground with more play equipment and trikes and that kind of stuff. But I hope you have the opportunity to visit there sometime. From this vantage, you can't see how absolutely light filled the schools are. All of the schools have tremendous natural daylight. If you haven't taken our tours of Einstein and Kellogg, our virtual tours, those are available on our website. We did, they're each about 7 minutes long, and they give you a great interior view. I think you can get a sense of just how much daylight is in these schools by all of those windows. These are built with an enclosed courtyard in them. They're tremendous learning environments for our students. They did some tours last week we're on spring break this week. They did some tours last week. And the principals were asked, what's the most common thing you heard from the kids? And it was, wow. So they're really excited. Now imagine on Monday, we do have our self-contained special education students who are in the buildings now, but every other student who enters that school on Monday will be 6th, 7th, or 8th grade will be new to those schools. And so they've been doing a lot of tours, and the students also said it seems easier to get around than we thought it would be. So you've got, instead of, how normally you just have your incoming class who's a little nervous about how am I going to find my way around, they're all experiencing that, but they're excited to get there. And there's Kellogg. That's the street face. Again, back here, it's a courtyard, and almost all of the interior is windows on the courtyard. One of the things that makes Kellogg really special, you'll see if you watch the video, they have a library that's elevated on the 2nd floor. It has windows on both sides. It just feels like you're in a tree house. It's so close to that back row of trees, and it's really amazing. Einstein, of course, has the views of the sound, having gone up a flight. So some of those kids have some pretty nice views up there on their 2nd floor. And then I know there's an article in Shoreline Area News, but if you missed it, we did do some recent refinancing of bonds. The bond market was very favorable toward this. We did this in February of this year. It included the bonds that built the high schools, and we saved about $20 million. So that was a great, normally they recommend maybe selling bonds if you're going to save 5%. And we got much, much higher, around 20 with that. So we were pretty happy with with being able to do that for our community. So here's the one, it's not quite at this moment as glamorous as some of the other projects, but these are pictures taken today. We are working on the installation of the Cork field at Echo Lake. And so that is underway. I tried to get a video embedded of this. It would probably be more exciting to like 4-year-olds than most of you, but you know, they were scooping dirt today, so that was exciting. These are taken by me through the fence, so they're not the best quality photos. You can see a deep pit. It does involve, you know, some drainage and some work, but they will have a, there's a little fence that I got in that one, but they will have a nice field. The reason we started a little early, the kids are, the way our schedule is working, the students are either attending morning or afternoon, so they're not really having outdoor recesses for long periods of time, so don't need the field right now. We want to make sure it's ready to go when they get back to school in September. And of course, an artificial turf field, Cork or otherwise, doesn't require any rest or any growing period. So when it's ready, it'll be ready and they can run out there and play on it. We typically in the past have had like a ribbon cutting for those fields and the kids run out and play. So hopefully we'll get to do something great with this one too. So this is an interesting little conundrum that we're experiencing here in the district. It's not unique to us in the region. You can see we were on a pretty steady growth trajectory here until this year. We've continued to drop since January. And so obviously through the pandemic, we've taken a hit. And next year, I won't be at all surprised if we're below 9,000. King County has taken pretty significant enrollment hits through the pandemic. So this slide you may or may not find very interesting. You can remember in the previous slide where we were a little flat in 17, 18, all of King County really was. That was an unanticipated blip that King County hit. I'm just showing King and Kitsap. It's very much the same for Pierce and Thurston. And so what we're seeing is conventional wisdom sometimes says when the economy goes down a little bit, people move a little bit further out. Well, they're moving a lot further out because we're seeing all of these Snohomish and Pierce. We're seeing all of these counties have very similar drops in enrollment. So King County dropped about 10,000 students from 2019 to 2020. And that's obviously when we had our big drop too. The question I get asked a lot is, were they all kindergartners? And some of them were kindergartners, but they weren't all kindergartners. So, you know, parents have the choice of maybe keeping their students out for a year in kindergarten. So, you know, we definitely know we have a small kindergarten class this year, but it's largely at elementary schools. Middle and highs have stayed flat. This is all of King, but it's very much the same for us. Our high schools have been, our high schools have been pretty flat, and we've taken some hits at, you know, middle school as well. So what we don't know yet is how many of the kindergartners who didn't come this year will come next year as first graders or as kindergartners, or have their parents found a pathway for them that they're now not going to return to public school. So they started at another type of school and now they will continue with that. But the challenge, as you know, for enrollment is when all of your loss of enrollment comes K-6, it has a really long lasting implications in the system. It takes a long time to get that back. If we just saw, you know, our 11th and 12th graders dropped because they did other things, then those classes are going to leave. But when you have much smaller classes along here, it takes a long time for those to get through the system. So then let's talk about some things I'm really proud about over the pandemic. Our food service just swung into action immediately. You know, we closed schools. We thought it was going to be for 2 weeks. They started doing individual lunch bags almost immediately. And at those pickup stations, the kids would receive a cold breakfast for the next day and a hot lunch for that day. And the cars would roll through. It was just awesome. Based on feedback, you know, at some point that's just not very practical for families showing up every day to pick up a lunch and a breakfast, right? So we started doing food boxes. As of February, which was the last time I saw the numbers, we provided 14,000 weekly meal boxes, and those had 7 days of meals in them. So that's a lot of meals for our community. And then we do deliveries to families who can't pick them up. As of September, when we were coming back in remote, we had distributed 5,300 Chromebooks for students and 3,000 Chromebooks or iPads for elementary students. You can see that's not quite the number of students we have, but not everybody chose to take one. Some folks have devices at home that they prefer to just go ahead and use. And at that point, tech had responded to over 800 home tech support requests. Obviously, with the uptick in devices, we had a lot of uptick in support requests, and they've been doing incredible work. They established a system. I'm pointing out this way because it's actually here on site. If your iPad quits working, we have these locked, secure lockers where they'll put one in to a new locker for you, give you the combination for that. Students don't have to miss a day. Their family can come after work. They pick up the new iPad, they drop the old one in there, closed door, twist the lock, and it's secure and waiting for our team to pick it up the next day. So they've really tried to support families very seamlessly with this. And then returning to school, we've been phasing in. We started our return with our self-contained special education students and then K-5. We did all of those at once because what we learned from other districts was when you do K-1 and then 2-3 and then 4-5, you have to redo the bus routes every time. You have to redo the specialist schedules. So it was better to bring them back all at one time. And then all of our students, K-12, on April 26th will have the opportunity to attend schools in person, or they can choose to stay remote. That's a requirement for us right now, is that they can choose to stay remote. We are attending 4 days in all of our schools. The students attend 4 days, not on Wednesdays. We do deep cleaning on Wednesdays and also some time for the teachers to plan. And they either attend mornings or afternoons. And lots of districts are doing lots of different models, but our teachers and our staff really felt it was important to see students as many days a week as possible to really check in. We all know that it's been a hard go for our students, and from a social emotional learning perspective, wanting to have as many opportunities to see them as possible. Students will wear masks in school. We are still doing 6 feet right now. And we'll continue to do that through this year. And we have windows open on the buses. We have a really fun video also up if you want to watch. It's for high school kids about coming back to school. And so that's kind of fun. They did it almost like an old time public service announcement, with a narrator's voice. And so it's kind of fun too. And then our equity work continues to really be a focus in the district. This is kind of the instructional part of my work. Our board passed a race and equity policy in the summer of 2017. And that was based on part of the genesis of that was when I came in 2014 and did an entry plan. I heard about a number of things, but one of the things I heard about was, equity, and a question about how are we serving all students in our district and providing opportunities for all students. So the following year we had a committee, and they recommended development of an equity department. And then an outgrowth of that was our race and equity policy. And then this summer, the board passed an ethnic studies resolution. Oh, I see a typo there. I will fix that. Ethnic studies resolution. And that is, that resolution provided for additional training for our staff, implementation of the since time immemorial curriculum, which is about Native Americans who have historically lived here and of course continue to live here, and their role and in our state, and then other aspects of having an accurate curriculum throughout our K-12 programming. We have equity leads in each building. That's a person who serves in another role in the district, but then is also hired to keep the school focused on equity. We have affinity groups for staff and families. One thing we know about hiring people is, if you're trying to diversify your staff in such a way that they match the diversity of your students, that's never going to happen if you hire people and then they leave, and then you hire people and then they leave. So affinity groups support retention of staff, and it also supports families. So we have a number of those. You can find more information about those affinity groups on our website. We are between the first and second readings. The first reading was our last meeting in our only meeting in April. It was, and then we'll have another reading in May of our support for anti-racism for schools. I need to move all of you. You're sitting on for Shoreline staff and students. And so that's a resolution that we are working on that will further support and really state the importance of this work for all of us. And then achieving equitable outcomes for students will continue to be a priority for the district moving forward. So next week, as I hope you know, we will have new superintendent forums. The aspiring superintendents, the applicants, will have the opportunity to meet with community. Those occur next week. There's details on our website. You can submit questions or you can listen into those community forums. And then I believe it's likely that the new superintendent will do an entry plan, as I did. And I encourage you to find a way to participate in one of their community forums or to invite them to your neighborhood association meeting, of course. And then Carol will actually Kathy will probably recognize this. I get asked what I'm doing next. And one of the things I hope to do is to walk the Camino. And my husband did this painting for me for a Christmas present of me walking the Camino. I don't know if travel to Spain will be a possibility in the coming year during what I've started to call my gap year. So I might have to find something else to do for this coming year and take my gap year a little bit down the road. But one person said to me, well, your Camino really begins when you decide to do it. So anything that gets in the way of you doing it in between is just a part of the Camino that you have to get through to complete your Camino. And then I wanted to show all of you this picture. This is a bad picture because it's a bunch of storm damage, but I got to thinking as you were all talking about, your place in the Echo Lake neighborhood. This is my place in the north. Now I am going to get emotional. My place in the Northwest neighborhood in Vancouver. And this is a house that my parents brought me home to. It was a little bit of a race when my parents found out they were expecting a third baby at 44 and 42. I don't think that was, never explicitly said that wasn't in their plans, but I suspect it wasn't. And they decided they needed to build a house for my 16-year-old sister, my 7-year-old sister, and me. That was a little bigger than the one we had. And this is the house they built. And this is the house I bought from my father many years after that, where I have lived, except for the last 10 years as a superintendent, my entire life. Well, I went to college too, but my husband and I own this home now. It's the only picture I could find. Unfortunately, you can see we have tall trees in that area too. And this was a heavy snow and it all crashed down on my Christmas decorations in the yard. So this is a picture I managed to find. I was there last weekend, and sadly the only person who had lived in the neighborhood longer than I had, Edie, died at 99 the weekend before. So this is my home in the Northwest neighborhood where I will return, although I'm sure with many visits to Shoreline along the way. But it's time for me to go back and make my place in a different way. And then this, I happened to pop into Echo Lake today and I just loved it. They have a bunch of posters. The students have been making posters about Echo Lake rocks. We are Echo Lake. I love this one in the top corner. I don't know if you can read it. Echo Lake is super. All things I feel are true about all of you, as well as our Echo Lake Elementary School. And I'm just so grateful to have had the opportunity to serve in Shoreline and to get to know some of you. And that is it. I'm going to stop sharing. Oh, and then behind me, you'll see the lovely, lovely flowers from all of you. Thank you so much. That meant a lot. So that is what I have. Boy, I did take up most of the time. Kathy, maybe we can have a cup of coffee sometime so I can learn about the Camino.
Happy to do that.
Well, that's an exciting time that you've been here in Shoreline with lots and lots of changes going on. I was interested in what the ethnicity breakouts were.
Yeah, I should have included that. So we are about, I'm going to probably get it wrong, but about 55% BIPOC students.
And so are there large pockets of diversity in Shoreline, or is it pretty much scattered all over?
You know, there is quite a varies quite a bit from school to school. Some of our schools have less diversity than others. I don't think I have a handy dandy chart for that, but just quickly looking here. So one place you can find that, I'll share my screen again. Should you, let me just get back to you, share screen. If you ever want to see a little bit more about that, you can go on to k12.wa.us. That's the OSPI website. And then if you click on report card, hopefully with relative speed, it will get you to, I want to see data for a school. So I can put in Echo Lake and it will come up right there. And you can do this for any school, or you can do this for as a district as a whole. And then you can click on diversity report. It starts with just a general, the thing you can click on diversity report, enrollment by student demographics. And then you can see exactly where you are.
So
Echo Lake is a bit more diverse than our district as a whole.
40% Caucasian white, 60% all other ethnicities.
And then you can see other pieces. You can see enrollment by student program and characteristics. So you can see at Echo Lake, about 26% of our students are English language learners. 36% of them are low income as qualified by the free and reduced lunch program. 2.5% are homeless, migrant, special education, students with disabilities. So it's a great resource, and you can find it for every school in the state.
Awesome. Wonderful. Well, thank you. All right. Questions from other people? Questions? Yes, Jean. You're on mute. Okay.
There we go. You mentioned at Parkwood being a 2-story school, so I'm wondering if there are elevators in these schools then for disabled access and such.
Yes, absolutely.
So all of them are more than one level.
Yeah, and actually that's a part of, if you do the virtual tour. We don't have a virtual tour of Parkwood because we had a real tour, but they talk about the ADA accessibility and making sure that the schools are accessible to all of our students.
Great. We did see the Early Learning Center, and it's wonderful.
It's
Our goddaughter's a teacher there.
Oh, nice.
What about the Cork?
Oh, and the other thing was the new playfield at Echo Lake is going to be cork, not rubber. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yep.
That'll make folks happy.
Yes, we definitely heard from the community there that you preferred not to have a crumb rubber space, and so we are using cork there.
Great, thank you.
I did take the virtual tour of the 2 middle schools, and they're absolutely beautiful. I love it how all the classrooms are around a courtyard, And so kids during their breaks or between classes can actually go outside and walk around a bit before going on to their next class.
It was a
Really.
huge part of the ask from students who were on the design committee. They said, we really want to go outside. Like, and that's sort of a no in our old schools. Like keeping them inside was sort of an objective of the old schools. And now, you know, they just have all those doors so they can crisscross across those courtyards and get some fresh air and go outside along the way. The other thing I love about them, and just thinking back to the stress levels of being a middle schooler, if you know which floor your class is on, if you head in one direction, eventually you will get there. They're a big loop. So if your class is on the second floor and you go up the stairs, whether you go right or you go left, eventually, if you keep going in the same direction, you're going to walk past your class. And I think, I mean, I used to regularly get lost at Einstein. It took a long time to learn Einstein. Memorably, our public information officer and I once were lost at Einstein. And, you know, some nice student just opened an exterior door for us, which is kind of what you don't want, right? Like they thought we looked nice, so they opened a door for us, let us in, but it wasn't ideal. But those were hard schools for the kids to get to know. Looks like Edgar, you have a hand up too.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. My kids graduated in 2015 and 2017 from Shorewood, so they were under your tenure. So, and the older one is actually studying to be a teacher. So,
Wonderful.
yeah. I hope this is not off topic, but we live near the Shoreline Center. Could you share any early plans or levels of developer interest in the Shoreline Center? You know, because I'm seeing a lot of development in terms of townhomes.
Yeah.
And
Yes, I can look outside the window right now and see pretty much my office is slightly south, but not by much. One of the assistants in the office faces the newest ones, which are right across the street. You know, we have a relatively new board. Everyone on the board has been on, you know, for about 15 months or less. And so they haven't really talked too much about property. Previous boards have been very interested in holding on to property. You know, surrounding districts have gotten themselves into some trouble around letting go of property because it's very difficult, as all of you know, to get property and to get enough property to build a high school, which obviously we have here since this used to be a high school, or, you know, another school can be extremely challenging in a place like Seattle. And so there hasn't really been an appetite. Your funds are very limited when you sell property. You can only do it for use it for other property improvements. Obviously, it's a one-time sale. You can't use it to have counselors for the next 50 years kind of a thing. So we also still own Sunset Park, Paramount School Park, Aldercrest Annex, and the Cedarbrook property. So those are not currently housing schools, but are other pieces of property. So I would say that there's probably developer interest, but you know,
no interest from your side, I guess.
Not any interest expressed from our side, right? Hi, Wes.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good, thanks.
What are you doing for swim teams since the pool's closed and the city hasn't got their pool up? And yeah, I was just curious.
Oh, you know what, Wes, you stumped me a little bit. We've got an interlocal agreement with another district and it changed because of the pandemic. Like the one we were going to go with had to switch. And so we're working through it, still having swim. As you know, dive can be complicated because even fewer pools have dive capabilities than have swim capabilities, but it's involving busing the kids out a bit further, but we are still having swim.
Okay. Yeah, because I mean, that was kind of surprising that the city and the district couldn't come to terms on that. I kind of was disappointed. So I thought there was a good opportunity. Hopefully, maybe there is in the future, right?
Yeah, you know, I think that not for that pool. That pool, I
No,
think.
but a new pool.
Yeah, and who knows what will happen down the road with that, but
Yeah, okay, I just thought I'd ask, because, I kind of had a feeling they would close that pool with the amount of work that's been going into it and the money they're having to spend, and you look at the bottom line of pools, it's not very good, so,
yeah, they're expensive.
thanks.
Any other questions for our superintendent?
There was a question that was emailed to us to ask her if she was familiar with the website greatschools.com and what you thought about it.
That is not one I'm familiar with right now.
Okay. And the other question was something called critical race theory. That's not anything I'm familiar with. Is that something you're aware of?
Well, as I kind of shared, we are really focusing our work on equity and access for all students. We know that race is a predictor of success in our schools, as well as really public schools as a system. And we are committed unapologetically to ending that.
What I didn't ask you before was how many, I've always been shocked at how many different languages our students speak. And Echo Lake was one of the higher ones. I don't want to venture a number. Maybe you can off the top of your head.
We have been in the 70s, and I don't know where we are right now, but many, many different languages, which, as you can imagine, presents different kinds of challenges than a district which may have many more families who speak another language at home, but it may be monolingual. Like some of our districts in Eastern Washington have very high percents of people who speak another language at home, but it may largely be Spanish. So we have an incredible tool called the Language Line, and all of our staff members can use it. They don't have to call to get permission. So if somebody comes here and they are asking questions, and we can find out what language they speak, and we find out it's Tigrinya, we call the Language Line and we say we need a Tigrinya interpreter, and they'll get somebody on the line right away. We can put them on speakerphone and be able to talk with people. And some of the languages are a little, you got to wait a little while, or you have to call the person back in a half an hour while they find an interpreter, but it's an awesome, awesome tool. A teacher can call it up if they want to call the family at home. And, we have students who speak French, German, Eritrean, all, an amazing diversity of languages, but the teachers can call up and be able to speak with their parents.
Oh, that's
Because
fabulous.
It's so great. And, you don't want, and unfortunately, we've all been in this situation as educators where we're asking a child to interpret for us,
Yes.
or an older child for a younger child. And it's really not an ideal situation. So this is a great thing. You can, in a conference, you can get them there on speakerphone. They don't have to travel to be there. It's really amazing.
What was that resource again?
It's called the Language Line.
Language Line. Thank you.
Yeah. And we've done a lot of training with it. So our use of it has increased quite a bit. When we initially got it, we didn't have very good implementation, but we've done a lot of training and just told people use it. You can be comfortable using it. You can use it. You don't have to get any permissions, and it works out great. The translation tools for, I don't know if some of you said you have grandkids in the district. The translation tools have gotten much better. Sometimes you might think like, why isn't this email a little more detailed? Why isn't, we're sending these out every Friday? It's because if we go beyond a certain number of words, it won't auto translate. And so sometimes we'll have like, click here for more information, so that then you can go to another thing that's going to be auto translated. And that's why that is. We are sometimes, Curtis and I are on Fridays before those go out looking for 10 words to cut. Put a semicolon there and take out that. So we'll be slicing those down a little bit in order to use the auto translate features, which have really enhanced families' ability to get our materials in a timely manner too. Otherwise, we have to have them manually translated, which just takes a few days, and we can't do it in nearly as many languages.
Wow. That sounds fabulous. There was a little boy in my daughter's 3rd grade, which was a while back, who only made it through the year because the cook at the school spoke Swedish. So
Wow.
when he'd get too frustrated, the teacher would say, "Do you want to go talk to Hildy?" And he'd go off to the kitchen, come back with the words.
I love that. Long history of Shoreline working together for success of kids.
Well, and I have to say that it's been such a pleasure to work with you and have you heading up our schools here. It's just been great to get to know you and all the fun things like standing out on 185th waving signs and the picnics, and you're always at the events. I mean, that's the other thing. And here you're sharing your evening with us on spring break week. So thank you for being here too, but it's just been such a pleasure. Thank you. And we wish
It's
you
always
the best.
been a pleasure for me as well. Thank you.
Wish you the best for the future. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. And so you'll be here till June.
End of June. Yes.
June. All right. Well, we've really, many of us live in Shoreline because of the Shoreline Public Schools. And we really appreciate your leadership with us. And it's especially, I think this year, or last year, you would have never imagined a pandemic shutting down everything. And I just can't imagine having to suddenly change everything to help kids go online to continue to learn. So thank you very much.
Well, our amazing educators have really done so much work, and I'm so grateful to all of them because they have, in addition to food service and tech, which I highlighted, obviously every classroom teacher just stepped up and learned how to help the students learn in this very unusual environment, and in a way, frankly, that is not always very rewarding for them. Nobody got into teaching and said, gosh, I'd love to sit behind a screen for 8 hours a day and never really meet my students. So I know they're having a good time being back too.
Good. Well, thank you very much.
All right. Thank you all.
All right, so we will continue on. We've had a few other people join us, and we earlier we asked everyone to introduce themselves and say a couple of things